Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and welcome to another lovely little rant time, I guess you could say. Haven't even used that title in a while, but today we have a pretty interesting video, one that I kind of wanted to get my pieces on because it clarifies a little game that I've been waiting for that comes out in less than 48 hours at this point. For those of you who don't know, Red Dead Redemption 2 is about to hit, and I think a lot of gamers are excited. I think this is one of the more hyped releases we've been getting for a long time. And should we be surprised? No. Rockstar Games, any of their productions have always been hitting hype levels beyond comprehension. If this was a GTA game, I can only imagine the magnification raised by like 8 times at this point, which is stellar. But at this point, we have to clarify certain things that have kicked out. So over the last week, I've been reading a lot of stuff about Red Dead 2, but one of the biggest prominent things that have been kicking up and stirring the pot around a little lately, so much so that I've been seeing some boycott the game almost because of this, at least over Twitter. I don't know how representative that is of the whole world, probably very mini, but definitely very mini. But when I look at the clarifications, basically, for those of you who are out of the loop, the game has taken 100-hour something work weeks, 80 to 100-hour work weeks. I don't know how accurate the 100-hour part of it is, but basically it has a massive crunch time that has been sort of intensified towards the tail end of its development. Over the last few weeks, as Red Dead 2 has gone gold and many things have had to have been happening, people at Rockstar Games have been very overworked because of this title. And a lot of people are saying that it is nonsense. And to me, there's always there's always the yes, it's nonsense, but there's always the let's rationally look at it side of the argument. So to preface this, I'm going to start this video off by saying I'm only going to be talking about just programmers at this point. I know that obviously developing a game, there's people who work in the entertainment complete, like the recording sides of it, the artistic sides of it, the sound side of it, the writing side of it, but I'm going to speak just primarily from a programmer's perspective. Otherwise, this video would go on forever. So, as somebody who has been in the software dev thing, I have seen how this stuff plays out. Programming games is just like programming a lot of other bits of software. Yes, there are certain specific things you have to do when you're developing games versus, say, developing just a generic software application that you use on your computer. Let's throw two comparative pieces into the mix. 2 pieces of software. Something like Adobe Premiere and something like Rockstar Games' Red Dead Redemption 2 are ineffective both software programs. One, however, takes a little more specialties and thought processes than the other, and vice versa. When you're in the programming field, software development, a lot of software developers usually will know how to program. See, programming's not some magical art. It's not about knowing what kind of syntax or how to inject this code. It's about figuring out how to turn something into code. If I got into the nitty-gritties, all of us Google everything and blah, that's about it. That's a whole separate video in of itself. But the act of programming is something that can kind of be universal. Yes, there are specialties, oddities here and there, but programmers usually can discuss with other programmers, regardless of field, to, discuss what they're doing. And most of the times, if they look at the nitty-gritty and what they're trying to figure out, they can all flowchart the same thing together. Now, the reason I bring that up is due to the fact that when you're a programmer in the games industry, it is a fucking terrible place to be for a programmer, especially when there are other fields out there that treat programmers with a little more pay, a little more respect, I could say. We have a lot of openings in like IT and all that kind of good stuff. So to see programmers who go into game development and make these amazing games while absolutely getting shit on is a little disheartening. And not just a little, very fucking disheartening. Now, for a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, the idea of having crunch time isn't unheard of. In fact, most games companies, like CD Projekt Red, for example, will develop a really, really good game. Witcher 3, that got numerous awards, was guilty like Rockstar Games is. GTA 4, same amounts of crunch. GTA 5, an immense amount of crunch time towards the end. And Red Dead shouldn't be anything different in of itself. So to see this kind of stuff happening isn't surprising. Is it saddening? Yeah, a little bit when you look at how much people get overworked, but at the same time, there's other things we need to clarify as we move on. Now, I covered from what I am looking at from a programmer's perspective and how bullshit it can be, especially when you're in this industry and putting the amount of hours you are putting in for almost no pay. Game developers are paid absolute fuck all. In fact, a lot of the money that these game developers produce all just goes right back to the publisher. In this case, it's Take-Two. And the biggest issue with this industry is that you'll have these big fucking publishers like Activision, EA, Ubisoft, Square Enix, and all all of them. While their games might be great, the executive corporate side of it, for example, will just shit on anybody beneath them. See, to a project manager at Rockstar Games, you're a fucking person, but to Take-Two, the company that owns Rockstar, you're another fucking cog in the wheel. And it wouldn't be unheard for them to shit can somebody after a big game is completed. And you can see it on the resumes of a lot of these budding game developers. They've worked on numerous projects, and shortly after they're finished a big project, they might even get shit canned out of the company. It's a very, very, very dark place to work in if you're developing games. Honestly, it comes down to just being fucking passionate about video games in general, because it sure as shit isn't about pay. It sure as shit isn't about the benefits that they're offering you, because you just get crapped on when you're the cog in the wheel in the situation. And when you're in the working world, you definitely want to earn money instead of, working towards just your passions, which is why a lot of hobbyist game developers will often have a full-time programming job and then do that shit as a side hobby. You got to pay your fucking bill somehow. But going back to the crunch, the immense amount of working hours that have been given to a lot of the developers and people working on this, first of all, the clarifications is that not every single person was working crazy crunch hours. In fact, a lot of the people working at the senior executive staff of this project were also working those crunch hours. And I'll say one thing, as somebody who, while I wasn't in game development, I can feel the crunch. It exists in almost any industry you go into. You go into the film and television business, yeah, we're crunching. I'll definitely pull in more hours than I sometimes have to. And to me, it's only okay when you have your executive, your senior branch covering it. I would never have somebody who works under me work more hours than I would ever do it. Simply put, being a leader on a project makes you the most responsible. And if you're the one who has to put in crazy amounts of hours because you're a project lead, then you better pucker up and get ready for it. But passing that down to people beneath you and making them lose the hours, put stress on their lives, is just not healthy. And the problem with this is that there's nothing to correct this kind of an issue. You look at game development, and the problem is, like lots of other businesses, people are unionized, which means that they're protected at least through their unions. Game developers don't really have that luxury. They're salaried, they're overworked, and they just really don't have recourses from that. You're kind of stuck in this hell if you choose to go down this road. See, the biggest problem that you effectively get walking into an office like this is when crunch time occurs, you don't have to work more than the hours that you're required. But then you get into those business practices that you don't really hear of, where basically if you don't work the extra hours, you're going to get peer pressured. They're going to put you under the microscope. They're going to fire you for the tiniest things. If you look at how the Japanese industries work, and it doesn't even have to be game development, they will demoralize the fuck out of you if they want you out of the office. And trust me, they're very good at it. And most American, European, all over the world, companies are definitely not underneath that. They're all effectively the same when it comes to demoralizing, kicking people out, being so min-max about every single thing that is being given to them. And so that is obviously one big issue, but I think it comes down to, of course, the unionization. See, when you go to other industries and you have definite issues, there's people who will bound together and strike against these people, and that sends a clear message. I see a lot of people on the internet boycotting Rockstar Games for this game. They're not going to buy Red Dead 2. Look, if you really want to get Red Dead 2, I know I want to get Red Dead 2. I'm going to buy it. I'm not going to sit here and boycott the game, because really the boycotting isn't going to help as much as you think. Because at the end of the day, these people game developers need to get together, game programmers, people who work in the industry regardless under the umbrella need to get together and create some form of protection or union. And there's obviously counter questions to that. People say if a union gets developed, they're going to offshore their game, they're going to license it out. This isn't some bullshit telemarketing nonsense that you can phone out to like India or China. This is an art, this is a special ability. Just because you phone it out or outsource it will not get you a quality product. And I think that's what's important for a lot of these companies. These big games like Red Dead Redemption 2, like Cyberpunk 2077, they're not small games. They're games created as full passion projects. And the only way you can develop them to the extent that these games are developed on, the level of quality, is to get professionals and pay the extra mile. But for me, I also agree in respecting people that work, because at the end of the day, when you play a product or you experience a product where people have been overworked to death, yeah, I understand they enjoy watching people play their game. I get that. But at the same time, it's still not good to see. So if you want to protest Take-Two in this situation, buy the game used if you have to do it, or don't buy it at all, do whatever you need to. But really the big solution to this situation is for a lot of these game developers to get together under an umbrella and protect themselves from these megacorps basically using them in such a disgusting manner, I would say. Because until that happens, nothing will really change with the games industry. These people are still going to get overworked. Crunch time, when crunch time happens, it's going to happen. And whether you're senior staff or you're the bottom rung of a project, it all comes down to how dirty the company above you is going to treat you. Activision may shit on you. EA most definitely will shit on you, I'm pretty sure. Capcom, any big publisher, any publisher in the world, the top brass are the ones that are really profiteering off of this. And in order to really combat that shit, I think game developers need to start actually getting together and fighting against this. But this is a very sensitive issue. And to close it off, I'll tell you this much. As somebody who's worked numerous, I guess hats, you could say numerous jobs, crunch time is a thing that is very fucking real. And the only way to counter it is to kind of get together and have some form of middle ground between the two. Crunch necessarily isn't something you can even avoid at this point. I think when you work with a lot of big projects that have a lot of things riding onto them, you as a person, when you become so emotionally attached to it that you want to put out the perfect product. But at the same time, that isn't super healthy either. So just know what your limits are, work properly, and at the end of the day, stand up, game developers. I am with you. I would rather have a game ship out a year delayed than be people treated like slaves at the end of the day in front of a keyboard. That is incredibly fucking demoralizing. But at the end of the day, I want to know what you guys think, what's going on with your thoughts on this. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am out.